Today I'm working on the second of 3 mini quilts that I'll be making for my free Quilting for Beginners series. The first one was my pumpkin patch mini. It just has 3 different fabrics in it, so a very simple palette. But today I want to do a little bit of scrap busting, so my color palette's going to be a little bit more all over the place. Hopefully a little bit more playful too. Mini quilts, by the way, are my absolute favorite way to use up scraps, so I'm excited to start cutting into some of these fabrics. These scraps right here that I'm working with are from a mystery quilt I made a few years ago, and I'll leave a link to that playlist if you're interested on how it came together and how it turned out. But anyway, moving on, I came up with a very simple pattern for today's mini quilt. It is mostly just 2.5-inch squares with a little bit of foundation paper piecing. As I'm sorting through the fabric, I'm looking for a nice mix of light, medium, and dark fabric that will work well together in this quilt. And then I can start cutting. I've cut all my 2.5-inch squares. I think I needed 37, and I got close to maybe even more than 50. So I'm doing well on the squares, but I'm not done cutting because I want to figure out how to arrange these before I cut the fabric for my foundation paper pieces. So I'm going to try a couple different things. I'm going to try to go random and chaotic for the first one because it's just sort of therapeutic to not care, you know, to just let everything fall how it's going to fall. And then I have another idea to make it look a little bit more deliberate. So I'm going to try those 2 things out, and then once I decide, I can cut the fabric and then start working with these. Here is option number 1. It's mostly random except for the fact that it goes dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light in a checkerboard pattern. So you might say it's sort of like a balanced chaos. So this is the center of the quilt, by the way. So overall, I think it looks good. It's just not quite speaking to me, not yet. Not until I see how the other one looks, so I can compare them. And here is option 2. It still has a little bit of chaos in the middle, but it has these deliberate sort of woven stripes going down and also across. So I think this is the arrangement that I want to go with. So I can go ahead and start cutting fabric for these pieces. So basically I'm going to need 2 from each of these colors. So I'll have 1 on either end of each of these stripes, up and down. So I need to prepare 12 of these, 2 in each of the outside colors. Okay, I think this is going to be pretty straightforward. I have the fabrics that I'm going to use for my paper piecing, and each of them are doubled over. So here's the fold, 2 sides, and I'm just going to very loosely trim these out. Oh, so I cut these pieces. I just added about like 3/4 of an inch extra to the pieces, and then I cut them out. And you'll notice I only did 1 of this because basically if I turn it over, that's the other one. So this side is A2, this side is A3, but because I have my pieces folded over, I'm actually cutting them both at the same time. So I can just lay this here, take my rotary cutter, and give it a real quick cut, just like that. And then I have 1 whole block done, and then I can just do it again over here. Trim that, oops, trim that, and then trim that. So pretty quick and easy. I don't need to be super accurate because my paper piece is going to take care of that for me. So for each of these pieces that I cut, the only part that is going to show in the piecing is this part right here. So it's okay if I'm a little rough around the edges. I just need to stay organized to keep this all together. So I have 2 blocks worth from this fabric, and then I'll cut 2 blocks worth from these fabrics. As I mentioned before, I'm going to do freezer paper foundation paper piecing. So I'm going to rough cut these just around the tops, probably, and then I'm going to glue them down with a glue stick onto my freezer paper, onto the paper side. I'm going to use that to weigh it down and then use my scissors to cut it out. So this is the shiny side, so I need to flip it over, use that to weigh it down, and then I like to use a ton of glue just so that it will stay on my freezer paper really, really well. So I'm going to be super messy and extravagant with the glue. Turn that over, and then really burnish it on there almost. Now after I've gotten everything glued down and I've given it a good long chance to dry, then I will come through and I'll rough cut each of those pieces out individually, and then I can start piecing. So here are my pieces now. I have the paper and then the shiny side of the freezer paper underneath, and I've pre-folded them and everything so that they'll be nice and easy to use. Now I'm just going to follow the steps A1, A2, A3, except you know what, A2 and A3, the order in which I do them is really, it doesn't matter at all. So I'm just going to iron this down, making sure that all of the fabric overlaps those edges, those lines. And I also want to note that after I use my iron on anything inky like this, I am going to wash it, or not wash it, you know, clean it off. I have some iron cleaner, but also a good thorough clean with a washcloth will be just fine, I think, in this case, but I just don't want any of that ink residue to live on my iron and then go and stain fabric later on. So I'm going to do this for all of these, then I'll trim them down and start adding the side pieces. So here's the first side done. Just going to finger press and then press as I've been calling it lately. And that's my first side. I'm going to do it again over here. So when I was foundation paper piecing my stems the other day, I was talking about how to make sure that your fabric was in the right place, but you could basically tell with that. With this one, it's a little harder. What I do is I hold this up to a very bright light, and then I'm looking for the outlines of the shape. And then I'm going to also look for the boundaries of the fabric behind. So I'm going to try to make sure that the fabric falls outside of those lines. I totally recommend that method. It's great for your peace of mind. You know that when you open it up, everything is going to be overlapping just how you want it. There are no surprises. And now the second side. Finger press. Press. And see, everything is aligned how I want it. It's very rough, of course, because I haven't finished cutting it out. But now this one is done. And for the rest of my little triangle things, I'm going to chain piece just to be faster. But that's the general process that I'm going to do. In general, I don't really care for trimming. It's like my least favorite part of quilting. But when it comes to paper piecing, it is so satisfying, especially when you go from this super wonky mess to something that looks like this, all neat and trim and perfect. It's just so satisfying. I mean, look at this. This weird, jagged, straight monstrosity to that. It's such a transformation. So super satisfying. I love that. Also, while I'm at the cutting mat, I want to address a comment I got on a video yesterday. Basically, they said, that is the weirdest way I've ever seen someone hold a rotary cutter. So I cut like, here's a little scrap. I cut like this instead of like this. So I have two things to say to that. And first of all, yes, I agree. It does look pretty funny. It sort of looks like if someone's holding their silverware wrong at the dinner table. But the second thing I want to say is there's a reason I hold it like this. I used to get a lot of wrist pain when I cut, and I switched over to this ergonomic rotary cutter, and it works great and everything. But I saw a video on Instagram of someone who cut like that, and they said that it reduces their wrist pain. And so I tried it out, and voila, it worked beautifully. I don't get any wrist pain when I cut like this. I mean, this one works just fine, but I go through phases where I want to use this one, and then I go through phases where I want to use this one. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I just gravitate to one or the other in phases. So I just want to let that person know, I totally get you. I see it too, but I do it for a reason. And I recommend it to anyone else who happens to have wrist pain. Hold it like this. So all my pieces are cut, all my freezer paper pieces are sewn and trimmed. I'm ready to start putting this together, and it's going to come together pretty fast. I think I'm going to start from the middle out. So I'll have one of the paper pieces, and then a corresponding square will go there, so they match. Then I've got two rectangles that are going to go on either side. And they're looking small because of this seam allowance will be gone. Then I have my next freezer paper piece with its corresponding square. And then the same for the other side. And then the first row and the bottom row are each going to have these two great big squares in the corners. So this is what the top row will look like. And then if you flip it around, it's going to be what the bottom row looks like too. Then for the next row down, I'm going to have these two guys. A filler square will go here, one of the ones that aren't the woven lines, if you will, the ones that go all the way through. So we'll have random here, and random here. But this color will repeat across this fabric. And I'm going to try to make sure that my patterns match up too. I don't want to accidentally switch one at the end like that. So I want my lines to match. Then for the next row, these fabrics will continue down, and the filler colors will go in here. Okay, I think you have a pretty good idea what's going on now. If you think back to the fabric audition I did a little bit earlier, you know what I'm going for. So let's go ahead, because this is such straightforward piecing from here, let's go ahead and skip to the end. Let's skip to the finished mini quilt top. Okay, I love how this turned out. It has a little bit of random, it has a little bit of on purpose. It's just sort of like a chaos, it's like a cohesive chaos. And I really enjoy how it came out. It was a lot of fun. It came together really fast. I like that there was just a little bit of freezer paper foundation piecing here just to liven up the 2.5-inch squares a little bit. There were just so many different ways that I could have done this mini quilt that I want to show you a few of the things that were kicking around in my brain. So prepare yourself for some mock-ups. Thanks for spending time with me today, quilters. If you want to support this channel and help me buy supplies and materials for future videos, please visit my Buy Me a Coffee page linked in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye!